Do you know how difficult it is to live in a country where I feel like I have to prove my worth so that I can be treated like a human being? I'm not even asking for preferential treatment. I'm asking to be treated like a human being.
Basic.
Basic. And you
Deep.
don't get this kind of raw emotion coming from a man of 51 years of age because I'm an actor. I've been living this every single day of my life. And so, white America, here's the question. Do you want two Americas? Do you want a divided States of America, or do you want a United States of America? It feels like the only time you love us is when we win gold medals for you. It feels like the only time you love us is when we come out with a powerful film that you're entertained by. I'm so anger is the result of profound hurt. I'm extremely hurt because I have a 15-year-old daughter and I have an 11-year-old son. What the freak are they going to do in another 5 years when I release them to this sick society who can't see their humanity because they can't get past their hue? Why can't you see my humanity? Because you can't get past my hue. We are done with this. We are done with this. We are done being victimized. We are done being brutalized. We are done being marginalized because you can't get past yourself. You have more voice talking about how Colin Kaepernick didn't have the right to take a knee because it interfered with your Sunday. It interfered with your entertainment. Now, you don't have a problem with an officer who takes a knee on the neck of a black human being? Every single day, I have a conversation with my children. It's the most painful conversation in the world. To have to steal the innocence of my children by having a conversation with them so that they're prepared, because I don't want society to steal their innocence in a lethal or brutal way, like I know is going to happen if I don't prepare my child for the battle ahead. There is not a black person in this country that has not had an experience of being brutalized or marginalized at the hands of a white person who couldn't see their humanity because they couldn't see past their hue. So every single day, I have to have a conversation with my daughter and with my son about the realities of this nation. And you know, it's very difficult to continue entertaining this thought that we are the greatest nation on earth.
For some.
We sat there and we watched SpaceX go up.
Yeah.
Who cares about a rocket going up into the atmosphere? And we can't control our atmosphere about human beings being treated equally.
Right.
NASA, can you do something about that?
Right
Can
here.
you do something about that right here? Don't go up into the atmosphere. Worry about the atmosphere that we're in right now.
Tell me why. I mean, because I saw your post. Tell me why you felt like that was something that you needed to do, something that you couldn't not be doing.
because I know that as a man who is dedicated, my life is, I tell folks often that acting is my passion, but activation is my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a book called Male versus Man to help males matriculate into manhood, to help men elevate their walk in it, and to help women understand that there is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I counsel people, I counsel marriages, I coach individuals, I help elevate my community. If I'm feeling like I'm fed up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's my daily function to grow people, and if I'm feeling like I'm fed up, if I'm feeling like I need to sequester myself to my home because my emotions are sensitive to the touch of someone's language, then I know.
Misunderstanding even.
Totally.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
don't you feel like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like the emotion is so raw, it is so vast, great,
Yes.
that
Yes.
the wrong look
Yes.
feels like it could be, you know what I mean?
Trigger.
A trigger.
A trigger. And that's what people don't get who live in a world where they experience privilege. Now, many white folks in our country have struggled with, well, I'm not privileged because my life is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
The presence of difficulty does not mean that you don't experience privilege.
Right.
When Amy Cooper literally said to, and this was the consciousness that many white Americans have about how whiteness can be weaponized. Oh, this is how you're going to treat me? You're not going to stop recording? I'm going to call the police and tell them that an African-American man is threatening me and my dog. She clearly understood that the implication was, if I'm pointing out the fact that this is an African-American man, I'm probably a Caucasian woman. Mm-hmm. And that comes with great consequence. See, white America has to see that when the police get called, when they come to deal with white America, they come asking questions first and then go into action. When they come into Black America, they come taking action first and ask questions second.
If questions are asked at all.
They usually begin asking questions after there's carnage.
Right.
So again, it's about taking action before they even have all of the answers. And that kind of action often leads to something lethal.
What do you make of the conversations around the protests? What do you make of the conversations around united efforts, organized effort toward a particular outcome?
You know, what I want, because it's pretty clear that we have two Americas, and I think it's pretty ironic that we're supposed to be called the United States of America, and we're more divided than ever before.
Yeah.
Black people wear the scarlet letter of society.
And
what
do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
That scarlet letter is our skin. And so no Black person that I've ever spoken to in my life wants to shed our skin. We just want to shed the stigma that has been placed on our skin by white America that says that you don't pay your taxes. You're not a person who uplifts your community. You're not even a citizen, right? And these protests.
You don't belong.
You don't belong. Listen, I have often said to my friends who happen to be white, who are allies of mine, I have explained it to them in this way. Imagine having to think of the place that you were born in, the place that you should take pride in. And you are treated often like a visitor and sometimes treated like an invader, an intruder, an assailant. That's how we're treated often in this society. And no one wants to talk about that. So the nature of these protests have to happen. Dr. King said it, that riots are the language of the unheard. No person who gets treated well in society riots. White America is not rioting. You know why? Because white America is not, they're not losing life at the hands of police brutality. They're not losing life over the hands of systemic racism. That's why they're not rioting. So it shouldn't be a surprise to us as a collective society, as a collective America, that we are now in the midst of protests. And let me just say this. It really discourages me when I hear white America say, see, the looting, the violence, that takes away from the message. No, it doesn't. That disrespects George Floyd's loss. No, it doesn't. That's the excuse that you give in order for you to divest in the conversation that needs to be tabled. Because if you ask every Black American, none of them are saying, wow, this violence really is, you know, now we can't have this conversation because look at what's going on. And let me just say this, there's a deeper level that we're not even examining. If you look at some of the footage that's happening right now, there are people that are dressing up in all Black that are busting out windows, that are starting fires, that are doing all of these things. It's not just Black people. So what I want you to see is that this is the distraction that's happening again in order for us to not have the conversation that got us here in the first place. And I'm just going to say this to all of my white brothers and sisters, whether you are acting like an ally or not, if you're complaining about the symptoms, if you're using your voice to amplify the systems or the symptoms, but you haven't used your voice to amplify the conditions that produce the symptoms, we don't want to hear from you right now. We have got to stop throwing Band-Aids on wounds that are infected. We got to start dealing with the conditions that are producing the symptoms. And the conditions are the things that we discussed earlier, the police brutality and the systematic racism that have gotten us to this point. That's why we are here. And that part is not going to get any better unless we get active. Hope is not a strategy. I'm a righteous man. I'm a godly man. Prayer is not a strategy. Information, insight, execution is a strategy. And until we begin to do that, we're going to remain here. And we're going to find ourselves right back here all over again.
It just feels like the conversation is shifting from the reason why they're protesting to look at them loot.
Yes.
And looking at them loot prevents you from actually acting on the reason why they're protesting in the first place. Yeah.
See, again, this is another diversionary tactic that our country has used for many years.
So how do we remind people to cut through that, right? Because it is true. The looting, the violence is certainly not what any one of us who are serious about the reason why the protests are necessary. No. It's not that anyone wants to see, right?
No.
And to hold the entire movement responsible.
Yes.
And responsible to that thing and that thing only doesn't allow us to actually have the conversations that need to be had.
Well, watch this. We know that there are white people in this country who are racist. We're not saying that all white people are. Mm-hmm. Even on the news, if you look at the stories that are being told about Black people, often you will get the impression that that all Black people are criminal. We already know that that's not the case. We know that there are some good police officers. We know that, right? We don't need to state that. Anybody in their right mind doesn't need to state that or be reminded of it. But what we're talking about are the ones that are the disease and the decay of a police department and we don't have to get too deep, but if you research the history behind how police departments were set up and why they were set up in the first place, if you pass down the same mentality from one generation of policing to the next, which it has, you fast forward to 2020, and it's the exact same policing that it was designed to be when the departments were set up in the first place. That's why we haven't gone away from that mentality. People are focusing on the loss of property and not focusing on the loss of people.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So the loss of people is what is propelling the loss of property. Because again, and I've said this on several occasions, you know, there's an African proverb that says when a child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. So loosely translated, when you don't give a person of the village what it needs, it will do all that it can to shine a spotlight on the fact that you have neglected it.
Right.
An embrace is a space of warmth that is provided by the village. When a citizen doesn't get what it needs from its village, from its society, it will do all that it can by any means necessary to bring it to your attention. Now watch this. We wouldn't even be having these profound conversations now were it not for all of not just the peaceful protesting, but the civil unrest that has come with it. George Floyd simply becomes the poster child for a laundry list of our people who have lost their hands similarly. So when they say his name, they're saying, say the names of all of the people who have lost their hands at the lives of police brutality, of systematic racism. Now watch this. You don't have to take our word for it. Even all the cities across America. So by the way, to white America, my white brothers and sisters, I want you to hear this clearly. Please don't use this violence, this civil unrest as a reason why you don't take this seriously enough as a citizen of this country to be activated to do something about this. You should be asking a question, hey, why is it that somebody is in so much pain they would be willing to risk their own lives? You don't think that these crimes are going to be prosecuted at some point? Why would someone be in so much pain as to put themselves at risk, to put other people at risk, to burn down other things that they would otherwise be using at risk? Why would somebody be in so much pain to do that? Right? That's the question that we should be asking. As a black person, let me just tell you this. Black people are more patriotic than anyone else in this country.
Why you say that?
You know why? Here's why. Black people still show up for America despite the fact that we don't get evidence that white America loves us. So when we sit there and we see a brother like George Floyd lose his life with his face on the ground, with a knee to his neck, and we got to beg for an arrest, Black people would be arrested on hearsay. Never mind a video. Black people would be arrested on hearsay. Never mind a video that you get to look at. And you'll have to forgive me. I know this is said with great passion. I know it might frighten you a little bit. But these are the things that you have to hear. These are the things that our country has to have. The conversations that we have to have. Because you're not hearing. And again, getting back to the point of riots being the language of the unheard. Because again, nobody ever riots when they're ever treated well. So the question you should be asking is, what is causing so much pain that Black people or people of color would be doing these things in order to table a conversation that we should have had decades, hundreds of years ago?
What do you think is, one of the things I keep hearing is that, not much has changed when the protests happened here in Los Angeles over the weekend. One of the things I was hearing was, not too much has changed. This reminds me of Rodney King, 30 so years ago, and not much has changed since then. What do you say to people who, what is your thought on that? Like, what do you say to people who are like, well, yeah, it's a shame that not much has changed since all this time?
Unfortunately, nothing has changed because nothing has been done. We keep finding ourselves at the same starting line.
Yeah, same impasse. Yeah.
Same impasse. So it's almost like we freeze a moment in time, and then we wonder why the same things keep happening over and over again. Listen, Black people are fed up. Black people are fed up. And I got to tell you, if you look at Derek Chauvin, the former police officer who killed George Floyd, he knew he was being recorded. Mm-hmm. That is what is astounding. Now, 18 times he had complaints levied against him. Yet he's still patrolling our streets. 18 times? 18 separate times, even Internal Affairs investigated these incidents. Why would any citizen levy a complaint against you when they have nothing to gain in levying the complaint? What do they get out of that? 18 citizens went out of their way. We all know that for every complaint that's levied against you, there are several more that never got levied because people said, Black people have PTSD in this country. They don't think their vote matters because when they do vote, they still get a person put in office that doesn't speak to their needs. Mm-hmm. They complain about police brutality, and yet we still have the same system. So Black people have PTSD when it comes to the systems that are set up to run this country. So there are a great many people who never, I had a sister friend who literally just called me yesterday and said that a police department here in California sexually assaulted her.
Whoa.
And that because of my post, it brought back all of these memories that she had put behind her and tried to stash away, store away. Mm-hmm. And that this post brought up all of those things for her. An African-American sister. A police department sexually assaulted her. And I gently had to ask, did you levy the complaint? And she said, no, because I knew no one would believe me. That's where we are in this country. That's where Black people are in this against this department that we call a police. See, police, unfortunately, move into this space where they see themselves having to constantly fight the bad guy. When they go in and they have their meetings, and before they go out in the field, they, all right, go get the bad guy, go get him. Well, who is the bad guy?
What does he look like?
Who is that? Who's the bad guy? What's the bad guy look like? Yeah. Is there a poster for what the bad guy looks like? So if you see yourself as someone who has to police, if you see yourself as a police officer and not a peace officer, you're going to go into action first before you ask any questions. You're going to go into grabbing someone, throwing someone down before you even decide to create a language that builds the gap between you and the citizens. Yeah. That's what's happening now. And so, that subsequently, that's why we're in this space.
What do you say, you know, another thing that I have seen and the conversation that I have had a lot these last several weeks has from people who want to be, if they are not already acting as, people who want to be allies. What can I do? What can I say? How can I help? I feel so bad. What do you need? What would you say? And I know that's like a kind of question, but what would you say to people who can no longer ignore the call to become an ally, to become a part of this movement, this call for change? How would you encourage them to get involved? First, use
your voice to amplify. Use your voice to amplify. Me saying that racism exists is like a disqualifier because I'm Black. So my axe to grind is somehow, you know, an agenda of assaulting white people,
right,
and interrupting their peace,
right.
But as a white person who is an ally of the movement, you have to use your voice to amplify it, to say, no. Racism exists. Mm-hmm. Here it is in living color. Here it is. I'm with one of my friends who happens to be Black, and here's what I see. Mm-hmm. I'm with my, you know, I move as a white person in this country, but I see racism happen in front of me.
Yeah.
Because they don't know that I'm an ally. They don't know that I'm connected to Black people. They don't know that I have a friend like Dondre.